Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. So first, really excited to talk about data. But I figured I'd start with a little bit of background on myself. Right now, I'm a product marketing manager at Trello, supporting our B2B products, particularly focused on how businesses can use Trello. But before that, I was also a PMM at Factual, a mobile location data company, and Tumblr also was a PMM there focused on monetization. Ironically enough, and I feel like a lot of people in this room can identify with this, I didn't go to college thinking I was going to become a product marketer. I actually started on the advertising side. Really pictured myself in like a Don Draper type of situation. But one of the things that really resonated with me in, working in media was all about the data and making sure that the clients really understood why we were making the recommendations we were doing in order to run these specific campaigns. And that kind of transcended to my role at Tumblr, where I actually worked on the ad operations side, which again was really focused on the metrics. So just gives you a little bit of background on, one, how much I love to talk about numbers. So if I get too in the weeds, just let me know. And second, just me showing off in Japan, me being really millennial with my Snapchat glasses. So you want to tell better stories with data. But I need to give you a caveat. I'm not a regular PMM, I'm a nerdy PMM. And what that means, just giving you, knowing my background, is that I sometimes overwhelm my colleagues with the level of research and information that I throw at them. So what I'm trying to show you in this talk is to just give you, some kind of thought starters, some kernels of ideas of the ways that I really approach problems and questions that I'm trying to answer with data, and hopefully inspires you to take some of these and implement them for your organization. And like any talk that I aspire to do, I always want to have a good acronym that you could take with you. So when you want to tell a story with data, make sure you go to the SPA. You got to make sure the data is specific, personalized, and actionable. And what does that mean? In terms of specific, you can't be too broad. Make sure that the data and the research that you do is really relevant to your audience. So here we are at a product marketing conference, and I'm working on a one sheet to talk to you about my product. So instead of, this is just stats I looked up on LinkedIn, instead of talking about how there's 22.1 million marketing managers on LinkedIn, making sure that you're focusing in on the audience that you're talking to and getting really specific on, who knew that there were 7.7 million product marketing managers out there? I didn't. The next, though, is not only being really specific with what you want to get across, but making sure that the data is personalized in terms of the things that your audience cares about. So, not everyone has the same pain points and concerns when it comes to the product. So, for example, if I'm still working on this one sheet, I think it would be really relevant for everyone in this room to reference some of the data points that we had in the State of Product Marketing report, talking about the 3 biggest frustrations for the PMMs. And then finally, the last piece, and I think that this is the most important piece, is just making sure that your data is actionable. When they look at this stat, they get inspired. They really want to take action and they want to learn more. So in the same one sheet, what if I told you, all wonderful product marketers, that the average American consumes 34 gigabytes of data daily? What would you do with that information in terms of your marketing strategy, where you're positioning yourself, and the distribution channels that you're thinking about, and how you really want to stand out? So by wrapping up this data from the SPA, you can use it to really power all functions of your PMM role. And I'll really go through each of these. But this data, I've used it to kind of help inform our key messaging and positioning when it comes to all of our products, working really closely with the product team and other internal teams to have a strong product development strategy. And also, helping enable the sales team to close those deals. So first, in talking with key messaging, really this is the core foundation. If you're going to take one thing away from my talk, this is where I think it doesn't have enough, people don't focus on this part of it enough. As product marketers, it's our job to be the advocate for the customer, both internally for the company and making sure that the customer is finding your message. The way that you do this is by creating, by focusing on 3 different areas in terms of research and data. So first, Everyone knows this part. Your customer personas. What types of customers are buying our product? Who is our message resonating the most with? But the suggestions that I'm going to give you actually focus on the other two, which is, one, how good is your market knowledge and intelligence? And two, what the heck are our competitors doing? And how can we anticipate some of the data that we collect from them to inform our future strategies, both internally and externally? But there's an issue. There's so many places to look, right? You don't even know where to start. And with that, I kind of give you 3 takeaways. So first, think about what your product really succeeds in. What makes you different? Use that framework to kind of help filter out the sources that you're getting. If you've got a really high NPS score, for example, look at your customer reviews to kind of learn what really makes your customers tick, and share that information with not only your product team, but also intertwine that with your messaging. Next, keep your friends close, but keep your competitors closer. If you work with me, I'm obsessed with competitive intelligence. I think that this product marketing muscle isn't normally flexed enough. But I think that by knowing what your competitors are doing, the way that they're messaging really shows an opening in market to see if you can really differentiate yourself even more. And finally, in terms of market intelligence, don't ignore it. Things happen so quickly, you don't want to be caught flat-footed. If you stay on top of your data, if you stay on top of your research, you can almost anticipate and work with the product team so that you know exactly what to do when things are changing. So one of the things that I always struggle with is, the access to data from internal data teams. One suggestion I always have is that there are a bunch of organizations that do a lot of free research to help you get a really good snapshot of what's happening in your industry for your customers, and that really helps inform, the way that you can position your product in market. So, takeaway number 1, and this is the most important one that I definitely recommend, is take the time to do your research and make sure you keep your data fresh. Something that I do every month is I set myself a Google Calendar invite for an hour. I set up the Google alerts of things that I want to keep track of, and I spend that time already blocked off to whatever research or data points, whatever document that I'm using to keep it fresh. And that way, you're able to just quickly update it. In the start, it's a little bit harder because there's a lot to sift through. But then once you have that regularly going, it's super easy to update. And the same goes for a competitive intelligence doc. I will be the first person to say sometimes I let the battle cards go stale every once in a while, but making sure that it's easy editable and accessible by everyone just saves you time, because if you're worried about version control or if pricing changes and you're looking at specific decks, try creating a Google Doc or a Confluence page that everyone has access to and you don't have to share out every single time. And then finally, and this is thinking about what makes your product special and different, particularly in the thought leadership space. Think about 4 to 5 key trends that you want to own and content pieces that you want to create, and make sure that you're staying on top of them to make sure that if things change, you know what's going, and you have a position on it from a product perspective. So speaking of product, this is a part where I always feel like knowing the data and knowing what's happening in market can help leverage my position within the company to get a seat at the table with the product team. Because it's your job to let the product team know what's happening, what are the external factors at play with your customers that they need to think about when creating a roadmap. So this is my favorite slide. Every team really needs data, but the problem is, this cute little boy, they're often overwhelmed with requests or love, And it's super important to not just give up there as saying, oh, I don't have access to data, so I really can't tell good stories with product. I'd like to challenge that. You are actually the asset. If you commit to keeping your research updated, knowing the data that you want to tell in your pitch, and the product narrative. My goal is always to make the product manager feel like they can't make a decision in the room without me, because they need to know, okay, if I decide to prioritize this feature over this feature, me being the expert on the customer, I can advocate for the customer and tell them the things that they care the most about. And with that said, I think it helps also just really align product with product marketing. It shouldn't be like this throwing over the wall and saying, okay, see you later, go launch that new product feature. You're really working together. You're using the data to strategize on whatever opportunities there might be in the future. So always remember to go to the spa. Here, the parts where you can, kind of commit yourself to collecting research and data on your customers' wants, their pain points, their doubts, their questions. That way you can leverage those data points internally to work with for example, on the product team and building the roadmap. If they have pain points, working with support to make sure that you have the right documentation ready. If they have doubts or if they're skeptical about certain things, making sure that the sales team knows how to handle those objections in certain pitches. And then finally, if they have any more questions or they want to learn more about the product, you can use that to help inform your content marketing pieces and making sure that in the things that they want to learn more about, your product is already associated with them. So, takeaway number 1, PMM roles look different in every single company. That's something we can all agree on. But the one thing that is definitively sits within the PMM role across any company is that we own and pick the external product narrative. So we need to own it. When it comes to working with the product team, it's super important that they know, anything that they're building with their roadmap kind of fits into that external narrative. And if it doesn't, you have the data and the market knowledge to kind of challenge them a little bit and say, okay, well, we could build that, but we've seen an XYZ survey and this research here that they would prefer this more. And so kind of making sure that, you're not combative, obviously, but just working with them to help them understand the external factors at play. Second, and I do this a lot, become a broken record. You spent all this time creating these battle cards, these research documents, these customer personas. Make sure you mention them, in constant product meetings and leverage that information so that more people in the company are thinking with that market mindset. Because then they start doing your job for you and you can focus on bigger strategic activities. And then finally, while the data team is always overwhelmed and just thinking about the prioritized product data asks, it's really important to be thrifty in your asks and make sure that your ask can kind of align with maybe another team, because that way, if it's just a marketing ask, which in my experience always gets prioritized to the bottom of data reports, if you're working with a sales team and positioning it as a monetization initiative or something that can help increase revenue, you can really tailor it so that it works not only for the sales team, but it also works for you and whatever message that you're trying to convey. And then finally, in the sales enablement piece, you again know all this market knowledge, customer in and out, and not only are you using that data to talk about what's important to your customer internally, but you can also use data to talk to your customers externally and make sure that the sales team tells a pitch that really resonates with your potential customers. So first, you use the data to level the playing field. I always like picking points that are super specific to the customer that you're trying to talk to help empathize and let them understand, I know what you're going through. I know the big problems that you're concerned about. But with that said, no one wants a sales deck with 20 slides of research. So you really need to hone in on the messaging that's most important to them, which is where talking to customers frequently, understanding, the biggest pain points that they care about, you reference really quick in the deck. And then finally, you use your product data to differentiate. So I'll give an example. When I worked at Tumblr, we were constantly hearing back from different customers, why should we spend with you? There's a million other social websites. What makes you guys different? And we looked at the numbers and we saw that Tumblr ads get shared way more than any other social ad. And by leaning into that metric, by talking about how yeah, our users are more likely to share the ads, and you're more likely to get more earned media from running with us. And that really helped resonate and give them context on like why they should consider Tumblr in addition to their other social buys. So again, going to the spa, here are some stats I made up just to kind of show the ways that we kind of reform and we think the particular sales pitches. So for the first one, we talk about a top concern for a potential customer. The second one, we talk about something that our product offers that no one else offers. And the third one is just talking about an overall trend that's going on in the industry. But here, I'm a visual learner, especially when it comes to pitch decks and making sure that the stats are really impactful. By repositioning the way that we talk about it, it really helps the data points resonate more and sit better with your audience. So the first takeaway is be impactful but not alarmist. One thing here that, the story I like to tell, I currently support Trello Enterprise, and the biggest differentiator between free Trello and Trello Enterprise is that we have a lot more security features. So when we look at our potential customers and we're saying, and we see them, growing and adding more people, we showed them a customized prompt that told them, specific features that how many external people were invited to certain boards, how many third-party integrations were added, how many attachments that they had, just to show the level of control that they didn't have by using the free product. But by positioning as Trello Enterprise as a solution and it was customized to the needs that they cared about, we were able to increase the awareness for our product and just the interest in learning more about it. But again, it wasn't like the roof is on fire, your data is not safe, that kind of thing. The other part of it is, leverage the data that you're collecting to power thought leadership pieces and those elusive MQLs. For example, Trello really leans into the idea of remote work. So all of our executive leadership has given multiple interviews about, the benefits of remote work, how you can use how you can use Trello as a product to help increase remote work. And, if you don't have access to leadership, if there are stats that you can share or places that you want to be at, we either work with a designer to create like an infographic and something that's really visual, or just, write a blog post about it. And then finally, and this is something that, goes without saying, is make sure you're gathering feedback from your sales team. Is your pitch resonating? Are there certain aspects of the pitch that people want to learn more data about or need more research on? Do different personas follow, or gravitate towards different data points that you're using? That's how you're able to create your specific flows and make sure that using the data really resonates with the type of person that you're talking to. So to wrap up, using data is really hard, but always, always, always aim to push it to fit your product narrative, because that's your North Star as a PMM. And while everyone here looks super comfortable in these awesome lounge chairs, if you can remember 3 things from this talk, one is just to really commit to a real and ongoing data collection practice. It's really important to stay on top of what's happening in your market and competitors, and also what customers are saying about your product. And with that, with that foundation of data, you're able to leverage it both internally with your product team and other internal teams, and externally to make sure that your sales pitch is as efficient as possible. And that's it. Any questions? Oh, there's one right there.
We're blind up here, so
there's one right there.
Where was it? Oh.
Hi, how do you structure and plan your meetings with sales or product to collect feedback on a monthly basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of product, it looks different across our organizations. I actually, in this most recent role at Trello, I sit within the product. We have triads, but now they're called squads, where it's the PMM, the PM, the lead designer, and the engineering manager. So if there's things that are happening on a weekly basis that I need to know about, that's one way that we work together. In terms of sales, it's a little bit harder because the motivation to share feedback isn't necessarily there a lot. But what we've done is we collect data through Salesforce, so like a closed loss, closed win, and then I kind of follow up and try to learn more. But then in terms of overall, trying to get them to, we have like demand gen meetings where we talk about, is our pitch resonating? Is it not resonating? And kind of adjusting there, go through the MQLs, figure out if they're, really good leads or not. And that goes on like a monthly basis. So we kind of split it up into different paths. Oh, there's a question right here in the front row.
Oh, great.
Hi. How do you interact with Jira? When your teams grow, maybe they need Jira, not Trello Enterprise. Yeah. How do you interact with their PMMs and their marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've kind of, the way that I think about it, and this is not the way that I think a lot of teams think about it, but Trello Enterprise kind of serves like the more tech adjacent teams that don't necessarily need a lot of workflow and structure to organize their work. So they still want a project management tool, but don't need the structure and level of Jira. But as they grow though, that does happen, and we've seen that happen. And honestly, like from the Trello side, we're like okay because it's still going to a fellow product that works with our flow. And I think as our integrations get better, you'll see a tighter alignment there on like when to really make the jump.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Jeannie.
Cool. Thank you.